Hey everybody, uh, here's a sourdough loaf. So this sourdough I made today. I started it yesterday. Pretty simple loaf. It is 400 grams of King Arthur organic unbleached bread flour and 100 grams of King Arthur medium rye flour, 400 grams of water, about 11 grams of salt, and 100 grams of mature active starter. So the process that I used was I autolyzed the flour and water. Basically, just mixed all the flour and water together in a bowl. No salt. Well, I take that back. I mixed the salt in with the water so that I knew I would have good dispersion. So I mixed all the flour and water and salt in a bowl, and I let that just sit for about 45 minutes. It was a pretty shaggy, not very cohesive dough at that point. Um, After that 45 minutes, I mixed in my 100 grams of starter, and I began to hand mix that dough to get it as cohesive as possible. It was still pretty pretty firm. It wasn't coming together like I really wanted it to. So I just added maybe another 10 or 15 grams of water, and it turned out to be pretty good. So we ended up right around, I think, 80% hydration on this loaf. Um, After that, after I get it all good together in a good tight dough, I put it in my bread proofing box at 76 degrees, and for the next few hours, every 45 minutes, I would come back and do a series of folds. The folds were where I would just take one part of the dough out of the, pull it up, fold it over, spin the dough, pull it up, fold it over. And I continued doing that for 5 or 6 times, just developing that gluten. After 5 or 6 times of folding like that, I would put it back in my proofing box for another 45 minutes and then do it again. I did that for a total of 4 stretch and fold sessions. And then I let it sit after that fourth one for about 30 minutes. After that 30 minutes came back, I brought the dough out of my proofing box over here to my cutting board. That's where I dumped out the bowl, dumped out the dough on the cutting board. I had lightly dusted the cutting board with flour, and I did a pre-shape. So that's just dumping the dough out, kind of flattening it out a little bit. I rolled in one corner, the corner that was closest to me. I rolled it into about a third of the way, just folded it over, and then folded over the sides to meet. And then I rolled that dough into a tight, kind of cylindrical shape. And then what I did is with my hands, once I had that top that was nice and taut in that kind of cylindrical shape, with my hands, I shaped the dough using this kind of motion here, where I was taking a little bit off the sides and kind of pushing it up under while I was turning it. So that way I would get a nice round, tight topped dough that was pre-shaped. And I let that pre-shape set for about 30 minutes on the cutting board. Then what I did with my banneton, this banneton here, I coated the inside with white rice flour, and then I took that dough, put it into the banneton. So the top of the dough that was on the cutting board, I just flipped it over into the banneton. Once I did that, I bagged it up, just a bread proofing plastic bag. You can use, heck, you can use a Walmart bag if you wanted to. And I put it in the fridge for a 16-hour cold ferment. So that was yesterday, midday through yesterday evening. And then this morning at about 9:30, at about 9, I preheated my oven to 450 degrees with my Lodge Dutch oven inside. So my Lodge I really like because the top, quote unquote, is actually this. So you can actually use it upside down, and then the top goes over it, or the bottom rather, goes over it like that. So with that Lodge preheating, I let it preheat in a 450 degree oven for about 30-45 minutes. I took my dough out of the fridge at the same time that I turned on my stove, so it sat out on the counter for about 30 minutes. I turned out the dough onto the bottom or top of that Lodge cast iron with just a round piece of parchment under there. I scored the top with my razor blade, and then I put in a couple of ice cubes down on the sides of the dough and quickly covered it up, got it in the oven. It sat in the oven for 21 minutes this time I did. I was a little bit late on catching it at 20 minutes, which is fine. Covered like that, it baked. And then I took off the cover and it baked for an additional 30 minutes. So we're at about 50 minutes of bake time here to get what you see here. And it's a really nice, crusty, and it smells wonderful. It smells like that cold ferment has really, it smells like it's really developed some great flavors. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut it open, see what we got. All right, moment of truth. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. That definitely has that really nice sourdough type scent to it. It's got some really complex kind of scents there. I'm sure it's going to taste amazing. So yeah, that's pretty much the process. It's actually really simple. Sounds like a lot, but it's really not. If you don't have a bread proofing box, that's fine. You can just leave it out on the counter, you know. The bowls that I use are just Pyrex mixing bowls, and I'll cover them with like a inverted dinner plate, basically. You don't want to let that dough sit out in the open air. It's going to get dried out on the surface and just, yeah. There's really not much more than that. The point where most people are gonna struggle is going to be that pre-shape and getting it into the banneton. But even then, you know, you don't really have to fuss with it too much. It's just simple: fold in, roll. That's it. You know. Next time I make a loaf, I'll actually try to film the entire process so that we can all see how it goes. You can all see how simple it is. And yeah, y'all have a good one.